Since slavery, the American white man has always kept some hand picked Negroes who fared much better than the black masses suffering and slaving out in the hot fields. The white man had these house and yard Negroes for his special servants. He threw them more crumbs from his rich table. He even let them eat in his kitchen. He knew that he could always count on them to keep good massa happy in his self image of being so good and righteous. Good massa, always. Today's Uncle Tom doesn't wear a handkerchief on his head. This modern 20th century Uncle Tom now often wears a top hat. He is usually well dressed and well educated. He's often the personification of culture and refinement. The 20th century Uncle Thomas sometimes speaks with a Yale or Harvard accent. Sometimes he's known as a professor, doctor, judge, and reverend, and even right reverend doctor. This 20th century Uncle Thomas is a professional Negro. By that I mean his profession is being a Negro for the white man. Never before in America had these hand picked so called leaders been publicly blasted in this way. They reacted to the truth about themselves even more hotly than the devilish white man. Now their institutional indictments of us began. Instead of leaders speaking as themselves, for themselves, now their weighty named organizations attacked Mr. Muhammad. They would outdo each other, leaping in on me, hammering at Mr. Muhammad, at me, and at the Nation of Islam. Those integration mad Negroes, you know what they jumped on? Why couldn't Muslims see that integration was the answer to American Negroes' problems? I try to rip that to pieces. No sane black man really wants integration. No sane white man really wants integration. No sane black man really believes that the white man ever will give the black man anything more than token integration. No, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches that for the American black man in America, the only solution is complete separation from the white man. Every time I mentioned separation, some of them would cry that we Muslims were standing for the same thing that white racists and demagogues stood for. I would explain the difference. No, we reject segregation even more militantly than you say you do. We want separation, which is not the same. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches us that segregation is when your life and liberty are controlled, regulated by someone else. To segregate means to control. Segregation is that which is forced upon inferiors by superiors. But separation is that which is done voluntarily by two equals, for the good of both. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches us that as long as our people here in America are dependent upon the white man, we will always be begging him for jobs, food, clothing, and housing. And he will always control our lives, regulate our lives, and have the power to segregate us. The Negro here in America has been treated like a child. A child stays within the mother until the time of birth. When the time of birth arrives, the child must be separated or it will destroy its mother and itself. The mother can't carry the child after its time. The child cries for and needs its own world. The greatest miracle Christianity has achieved in America is that the black man in white Christian hands has not grown violent. It's a miracle that 22 million black people have not risen up against their oppressors, in which they would have been justified by all moral criteria and even by the democratic tradition. It's a miracle that a nation of black people has so fervently continued to believe in the turn the other cheek and heaven is for you after you die philosophy. It's a miracle that the American black people have remained a peaceful people while catching all the centuries of hell that they have caught here in the white man's heaven. The miracle is that the white man's puppet Negro leaders, his preachers, and the educated Negroes laden with degrees, and others who have been allowed to wax fat off their black poor brothers, have been able to hold the black masses quiet until now. You have tilled his fields, cooked his food, washed his clothes. You have cared for his wife and children when he was away. In many cases, you have even suckled him at your breast. You have been far and away better Christians than this slave master who taught you his Christianity. You have sweated blood to help him build a country so rich that he can today afford to give away millions, even to his enemies. And when those enemies have gotten enough from him to be able to attack him, you have been his brave soldiers, dying for him. And you have been always his most faithful servant during the so-called peaceful times. And still, this Christian American white man has not got it in him to find the human decency and enough sense of justice to recognize us and accept us, the black people who have done so much for him as fellow human beings. Written concerning it about the Nation of Islam's phenomenal record of dope addiction cures of longtime junkies. In fact, the New York Times carried a story about how some of the social agencies have asked representatives of the Muslim program for clinical suggestions. The Muslim program began with recognizing that color and addiction have a distinct connection. It is no accident that in the entire Western Hemisphere, the greatest localized concentration of addicts is in Harlem. Our cure program's first major ingredient was the painfully patient work of Muslims who previously were junkies themselves. Unless we call one white man by a name a devil, we are not speaking of any individual white man. We are speaking of the collective white man's historical record. We are speaking of the collective white man's cruelties and evils and greeds, and that have seen him act like a devil towards the non-white man. Any intelligent, honest, objective person cannot fail to realize that this white man slave trade and his subsequent devilish actions are directly responsible for not only the presence of this black man in America, but also for the condition in which we find this black man here. You cannot find one black man, I don't care who he is, who has not been personally damaged in some way by the devilish acts of the collective white man. The white man, give him his due, has an extraordinary intelligence and extraordinary cleverness. His world is full of proof of it. You can't name a thing the white man can't make. You can hardly name a scientific problem he can't solve. Here he is now solving the problems of sending men exploring into outer space and returning them safely to Earth. But in the arena of dealing with human beings, the white man's working intelligence is hobbled. His intelligence will fail him altogether if the humans happen to be non-white. The white man's emotions supersede his intelligence. He will commit today, in many ways, the black man sees the collective white man in America better than the white man can see himself. And the 22 million blacks realize increasingly that physically, politically, economically, and even to some degree socially, the aroused black man can create a turmoil in the white America's vitals, not to mention America's international image. Well, sir, I see the same boycott reasoning for Negroes asked to join the Army, Navy, and Air Force. Why should we go off to die somewhere to preserve a so-called democracy that gives a white immigrant of one day more than it gives the black man with 400 years of slaving and serving in this country? The Deep South white press generally blacked me out, but they front-paged what I felt about northern white and black freedom riders going south to demonstrate. I called it ridiculous. Their own northern ghettos right at home had enough rats and roaches to kill to keep all the freedom riders busy. I said that ultra-liberal New York had more integration problems than Mississippi. If the northern freedom riders wanted more to do, they could work on the roots of such ghetto evils as the little children out in the streets at midnight with apartment keys on strings around their necks to let themselves in, and their mothers and fathers drunk, drug addicts, thieves, prostitutes. Or the Northern Freedom Riders could light some fires under northern city halls, unions, and major industries to give more jobs to Negroes, to remove so many of them from the relief and welfare roles which created laziness and which deteriorated the ghettos into steadily worse places for humans to live. It is all absolute truth. But what did I want to say for it? Snakes couldn't have turned on me faster than the liberal. I believe my own life mirrors this hypocrisy. I know nothing of the South. I'm a creation of the northern white man and of his hypocritical attitude toward the Negro. The white Southerner was always given his due by Mr. Muhammad. The white Southerner, you can say one thing, he's honest. He bares his teeth to the black man. He tells the black man to his face that Southern whites will never accept phony integration. The Southern white goes further to tell the black man that he means to fight him every inch of the way against even the so-called tokenism. The advantage of this is the Southern black man never has been under any illusions about the opposition he is dealing with. You can say for many Southern white people that individually they have been paternalistically helpful to many individual Negroes, but the Northern white man, he grins with his teeth, and his mouth has always been full of tricks and lies of equality and integration. When one day all over America, actually, America's most dangerous and threatening black man is the one who's been kept sealed up by the Northerner in the black ghettos. The Northern white power structure system to keep talking democracy while keeping the black man out of sight somewhere around the corner. How can the white American government figure on selling democracy and brotherhood to non-white peoples if they read and hear every day what's going on right here in America and see the better than 1,000 words photographs of the American white man denying democracy and brotherhood even to America's native-born whites? Native-born non-white, sorry. The world's non-whites know how this Negro here has loved the American white man and slaved for him, tended to him, nursed him. This Negro has jumped into uniform and gone off and died when this America was attacked by enemies both white and non-white. Such a faithful, loyal non-white as this, and still America bombs him and sets dogs on him and turns fire hoses on him, and jails him by the thousand, and beats him bloody, and inflicts upon him all manner of other crimes. The American black man should be focusing his every effort towards building his own businesses and decent homes for himself, as other ethnic groups have done. Let the black people, wherever possible, however possible, patronize their own kind, hire their own kind, and start in those ways to build up the black race's ability to do for itself. That's the only way the American black man is ever going to get respect. One thing the white man never can give the black man is self-respect. The black man never can become independent and recognized as a human being who is truly equal with other human beings until he has what they have, until he's doing for himself what others are doing for themselves. The black man in the ghettos, for instance, has to start self-correcting his own material, moral, and spiritual defects and evils. The black man needs to start his own program to get rid of drunkenness, drug addiction, prostitution. The black man in America has to lift up his own sense of values. The White House, with a fanfare of international publicity, approved, endorsed, and welcomed a march on Washington. Yes, I was there. I observed the circus. Whoever heard of angry revolutionists all harmonizing "We shall overcome someday" while tripping and swaying along arm in arm with the very people they were supposed to be angrily revolting against? Whoever heard of angry revolutionists swinging their bare feet together with their oppressors in lily pad park pools with gospels and guitars and "I Have a Dream" speeches? And the black masses in America were, and still are, having a nightmare. The very fact that millions, black and white, believed in this monumental farce is another example of how much this country goes in for the surface glossing over the escape ruse surfaces instead of truly dealing with its deep rooted problems. What that March on Washington did do was lull Negroes for a while, but inevitably the black masses started realizing that they had been smoothly hoaxed again by the white man. And inevitably, the black man's anger rekindled deeper than ever, and there began bursting out in different cities in the long, hot summer of 1964 unprecedented racial crises. One particular university's token integrated black PhD associate professor, I'll never forget, he got me so mad I couldn't see straight. As badly as our 22 millions of educationally deprived black people needed the help of any brains he has, there he was looking like some fly in the buttermilk among white colleagues, and he was trying to eat me up. He was ranting about what a divisive demagogue and what a reverse racist I was. I was racking my head to spear that fool. Finally, I held up my hand and he stopped. Do you know what white racists call black PhDs? He said something like, I believe that I happen not to be aware of that. You know, one of those ultra proper talking Negroes. And I laid the word down on him loud. Nigger. I will never forget one little blonde co-ed after I had spoken at her New England college. She must have caught the next plane behind that one I took to New York. She found the Muslim restaurant in Harlem. I just happened to be there when she came in. Her clothes, her carriage, her accent all showed deep South white breeding and money. At that college, Anyway, I'd never seen anyone I ever spoke before more affected than this little white college girl. She demanded right up in my face, don't you believe there are any good white people? I didn't want to hurt her feelings. I told her, people's deeds I believe in, miss, not their words. What can I do? She exclaimed. I told her nothing. She burst out crying and ran out and up Lenox Avenue and caught a taxi.